Hello, great to see you all again. In today's video I'm talking all about winter. I've got some great tips, ideas and tricks to get some great winter landscapes. Okay, so let's get going. Hope everyone had a good holiday, and I'm sure if you're like me then you're probably sick of just eating too many chocolates. So winter is a great time to get out and start shooting. One of the great things about winter is the sun's at a lower angle in the sky, so those golden hours just last a little bit longer, and you can pretty much shoot throughout the whole day. Now what I'm going to do today is go through 7 tips and ideas to get some better winter shots. Okay, the first thing is colour. So colour really matters, I think, in winter photography. Often you look at a scene and it's quite monochromatic. So the snow and the lack of leaves on the trees really create a very sort of black and white scene. But if you can add a little bit of colour into it, then it makes a really big difference to that image. So I'm going to go through a couple of images now and show you a little bit more about what I mean. So this one here, this image, before I do this actually, I'll just show you the colour wheel. So the colour wheel, on the colour wheel you can see that the blue and the oranges are sort of opposite sides of the colour wheel. So if you can get those contrasting colours, and quite often in a snowy scene or a cold looking scene then you have some blue. So if you can get an orange colour in that scene as well, then they really complement each other and you can get a really good image. So in this image here, this was taken in France. You know, this would be an okay landscape, but these huts that I've added here in the sort of intersection of the thirds really add to the dynamic of this image. So just that little splash of colour in the image makes a really big difference. And then again, looking at this image, which I took, and actually this was also in the Alps in France. It's a very blue looking scene. It was early in the morning and I was driving back down the mountain actually, and the sun was just rising. As it was rising, you can see it just caught the top of the mountains here, and it made such a big difference to the image. Now you could convert this into black and white and it just wouldn't look anywhere near as good. It's that splash of colour, that splash of orange in the clouds on top of the mountain, which really makes this image and brings this winter landscape to life. So it's a really good idea whether that colour is created by the sun, casting some great light on the landscape, or it's just maybe just a little bit of light that you spot out on a hut, or maybe a person that's got a different colour coat on. You often see, if you look on Instagram, people wearing yellow or red in winter scenes, and it just looks so good. Really concentrate on colour and how you use colour in your landscapes, and I think you'll find that you can get some amazing shots. You know, just really look for those colours. Maybe they're just the last leaf on a tree, and you'll find that oak trees keep their leaves for a bit longer, and you might just find a leaf or a hut. And then also you can use white balance to your advantage as well. So the white balance that you would add in an image makes a really big difference to that image. So for instance, here in an image that I've shown in one of my previous videos, Sun Tree, it's one of my favourite images. But if I show you this image as the camera took it, you can see it's quite a warm looking image. But if I just adjust the white balance to how I thought it was that morning, which is a lot colder, then you can see that the coldness in the frost, it was about -7 degrees C, is really brought out in the foreground of the image. So thinking about the white balance is really important in winter scenes, and adjusting that white balance to complement the mood of your image makes a really big difference to the scene and the shot and what you're trying to portray in the story of that image. So, you know, really think about that. Make sure you shoot on RAW so that you're not locking that white balance into the photo, and then you can change it in Lightroom later. Top tip that I use is that I shoot all my shots on sunny white balance, and then I know that the white balance when I look at them in Lightroom is all the same, and then I can adjust it to how I think I want it to look to again reflect the story of that image. So the second tip is using snow and ice and frost to aid the composition of your image. So often snow adds simplicity to an image. It reduces the complexity of the grass and the things that might be on the grass and creates a more even, uniform layer, and you can use that to your advantage in creating strong images. So this is a really good example here. This was a hill near where I live called Shuttling Slough, and you can see that the contrast of the walls and the stone hut here against the snow is really quite strong. And you can also use a long lens to take further advantage of this. That photo that I took in Scotland on my first video in Scotland, which is linked here, just shows that off really well. So you can see that, again, the snow has created a more simplistic landscape and reduced a lot of the different colours in the landscape, and that creates a very strong composition. So this image here was an image that I took of a wall leading down into the distant hills and mountains, and you can see how the snow has really helped that composition. It's not the best ever image here, but it demonstrates the point. So the snow on the wall has created more texture on the wall. The snow on the rock in the background has picked out some details of the rock. So by using snow, it changes the composition of the image slightly, and you can add to the strong elements that often exist in images. You can do that with the way the snow lands on trees, or the way it lands on leaves, or the way it lands on the ground and rocks, and it really can improve your images. Don't just think that if a beautiful scene has snow on it that you're going to get an amazing image, because it doesn't always work that way. Things can look really amazing, but actually when you go and take them or trying to find a composition, it can be difficult, and snow can make it difficult. So this is a funny story. When I was in Squaw, which is in California, that there was a huge snowfall, around about 2 foot of snow fell. And we were passing by this river here, and I just couldn't find a composition, and I actually waded through some really deep snow to try and get there. And no matter what I did, I just couldn't find a composition. Now, what I should have done is put a longer lens on and tried to pick out some detail. But I'd also already waded down this really deep snow, and I just couldn't face doing it again. It was so hard to get up and down the snow. But if I'd have thought about it, I'd have put a longer lens on and tried to pick out some of the detail in these trees in the middle of the scene. But just snow just doesn't always make an amazing landscape just straight in front of you. You've still got to go and try and find that composition. So the third thing is concentrate on the details. Look for details, ice patterns, the way that the snow and the wind has blown the snow. And you can often find some really abstract images in that. I was taking an image of some snow that had been blown by the wind, and it was really great. I had my macro lens on, and I tried to zoom in a little bit closer. And you can see this is where I've used white balance to my advantage. I really cooled down the image to create that really cold feeling. And it almost looks like a drone shot where I'm looking down on some mountains. You can also do it and photograph with a macro lens the ice crystals as well if you get really close up, and use the macro lens to create some amazing bokeh in the background. If you get it just right, then you can create sort of rainbow effects in that bokeh as well, and it can look really amazing. And then by using backlighting and getting close in on the way that the ice forms on the grasses, again, you can create some really stunning results. So here's some grass that has just been backlit by some beautiful morning light. And you can see where the frost has just created this spectacular look to the way the grass is shown. And again, by using a really narrow depth of field, you can really pick out the details in that grass. So just look a bit closer and try and think about how you can use your camera in a slightly different way, and you can get some amazing results. So the fourth idea is trying to portray the mood of the day and the conditions on the day. So don't be put off if it's snowing really hard, or if it's really frosty, or if it's foggy, because often the conditions that you get in winter and the way you portray those conditions can create a really, really strong image. So the first image I want to show you here was an image that I took, and this was actually taken with my iPhone. I was on a one-to-one workshop, and it really started to snow really hard. We were putting our gear away, and then I said, I actually think we could get quite a good image here of the snow coming down. So I got my iPhone out just to demonstrate what we might be able to get, which is obviously a good tool to use as well. You know, just getting your iPhone and taking some shots to see whether it might work or not. Worked out around about 1/50th of a second, which works really well for snow streaks. And you can see that adds a really great layer to the image, which simplifies the image a little bit. So I was really pleased with that. Again, an image that I've spoken about before. I did a video on how I edited this image and how editing it to portray the mood was really important. It was an image that I took when I was at River Brathay in the Lake District, and it was a really cold morning. I really wanted to portray that cold, but also the sun was rising and it looked quite, you know, there was a real glow to it as well. So I edited it slightly different for the top and bottom of the image. So the top is a warmer white balance and the bottom so a little bit of a colder white balance. And by doing that, it's created a quite strong image that reflects the mood. So the fifth thing is to take care with your exposure. It's really important to, when you're taking snow scenes, to make sure that you just don't go out there, put it on full auto and take some images, because what you'll find is a lot of them are underexposed. Your camera tends to expose for a neutral grey in the image, and I think that's about 17% grey. But when you have a lot of white in it, it assumes that that's meant to be grey and underexposes the image. So what you want to do is that you want to push up the exposure. Now, obviously what you should be doing is looking at your histogram all the time. But if you push up the exposure on your image and make sure your histogram isn't clipping the highlights, then you'll get a properly exposed image. And you really want to be exposing to the right, pushing your histogram to the right as much as possible to get the best out of your sensor. And these are two images that I wanted to show where this was definitely the case. The first one is the Alps again, and this was an image that if I show you the image that I took first here, then you can see it's so underexposed, and then I corrected the exposure and you can see this is the image with a correct exposure. Now, if I use the first image and try to bring out some of the shadow detail, then I get more noise. So it's really important to expose it correctly in camera. Don't be fooled by your sensor. Expose for the highlights, and maybe just spot me to the highlights is often a good way of doing it. The sixth thing is shoot in the morning. I can't stress how important it is to get out early in the morning and shoot in winter. I find that probably 90% of my shots are shot in the morning in winter, much more so than any other season of the year, because you get frost on the floor, you get the fresh fall of snow, you get amazing atmospheric conditions in the morning, which you just don't get in the evening. This image here was one where I was actually walking pebbles and we were just on the top of a hill. It had just been a fresh snowfall, and you can see the wind had just blown the snow into some really great patterns that create great leading lines down into the valley, and the sun just created this amazing glow in the top right. So by getting out in the morning and using that low sun, it allowed me to really pick up on those patterns in the foreground, but also created a great glow in the top right. So getting out in the morning is so important. Again, this was a shot that I took in Yosemite. It was amazing conditions. The fog was still hanging in the valley and the sun was creating these amazing golden rays through the trees. And if I'd have been there an hour or so later, that mist would have gone and I wouldn't have got those great conditions. So yeah, getting out in the morning makes such a big difference to your photography. Okay, the seventh thing that I would recommend when you're trying to do some great winter photography is love the trees. So trees obviously have lost all their leaves, or deciduous trees have lost all their leaves in the winter. They show their true shapes and their characters, and you can get some amazing shots of trees in the winter. Whether that's trees that have had fresh snow on them, or trees that are just in the landscape that haven't had any snow on them, or maybe just got a little bit of frost on them, you should go out and try and photograph them. So here I am photographing some trees that have just had some fresh snow on them, and they just look fantastic. You can see all the veins of all the branches, and it picks out all the detail in those branches, and you can create some amazing shots with snow on those trees. But you don't have to have snow on the trees. Here's a shot where it was just the border between autumn and winter. And this tree, which I've shot so many times before, had lost its leaves, and the shape of it just was really beautiful. But by going when it was a hard frost, it created a different dynamic to the image. And again, I was out in the morning here, and the morning light just casts a fantastic light on the backdrop. You know, the frost on the wall just gives you that cold feeling. You know it's winter when you look at this image. So yeah, you know, going out and photographing trees is a great idea, but you don't have to do it even in the frost. So here's one that I did at Rydal Water in the Lake District. Often you get mist on Rydal Water in the winter. You get a lot more mist and fog in the winter than you do in the summer months, and it's a lot easier to get up and photograph that fog in the morning. And it creates a better look with some of the deciduous trees as well, so you can see the shape of the deciduous trees. When you print this image, and I printed this image at A2, then it just looks fantastic. You can pick out all the details of all the branches and all the trees in the background, and you want to look around the image and look for different shapes in there, and it just really does look brilliant. So there's some tips, there's some great ideas to get out and shoot in winter. There's obviously loads of other things that you can do. I wanted to share some things that I thought were really important, but what you've got to do now is get out and shoot. You know, the most important thing is when it snows, when there's some frost, when there's some cold conditions, some fog or whatever, go out and shoot. Take advantage of that low light that lasts often throughout the day and get some great shots. So I wanted to thank everybody once again for watching my video and subscribing. We're now on 11,000 subscribers, and I'm just so grateful to everybody. This year's just been such an amazing year. I've really enjoyed making these videos. And I've got so much planned for 2018. I'm going to some different countries to shoot, and I'm going to have quite a lot more workshops. So if you're not signed up for my newsletter, then sign up. There's a link here or a link in the show notes below as well. And I'm going to be doing more group workshops, more residential workshops, and also my one-to-one workshops as well. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.